I'm here with Dee Stribling, myself, William Davis. For those of you who do not know me, I am the 2016 to 2018 Hillsborough Poet Laureate. I'm a teacher in the community, a basketball coach, a personal trainer, an advocate for everything that Hillsborough brings. And we have here Dee Stribling, the 2018 to 2020 Hillsborough Poet Laureate, a avid community advocate, very avid in the community in regards to starting programs as the Youth Poet Laureate that we're starting right here. I'm looking forward to really getting to know Dee through this interview, and you all as a community having an opportunity to know Dee as well. So thank you, Dee, for welcoming yourself to this interview.
Absolutely. Thank you, William. I'm so glad you're doing this, and I'm really excited about partnering with you for the Youth Poet Laureate and the upcoming next Poet Laureate. So I'm excited about that and looking forward to it. So I'm happy to do this and share this conversation with you. So
that's perfect. Before we even get into that Youth Poet Laureate, we'll keep that on a side note for you listeners to really understand that's coming next. Do you mind giving the listeners and myself a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've always enjoyed poetry. I've written it or tried to write poetry. It's just sort of happened for many, many years. And I got serious about it again about 10 years ago. So I have a background in geography. I went to UNC, worked at Duke, and played softball with KU at State. So I am caught in the middle of an ACC, kind of conundrum here. But the geography part is important because it informs how things in our world are connected. Very interested in culture, very interested in how people in rural and smaller communities make things happen, how they bond, how they form community, because those are my roots. I grew up in the foothills, the countryside, way sort of between Winston and North Wilkesboro, way away. And my grandparents on my mother's side were Quaker and farmers. And so that informs my poetry as well. So I did work for many, many years at a large privately owned software company in Cary. And that was a great experience. Had an opportunity to retire in big quotes from that a couple of years ago, and have been picking up freelance work and writing and loving it because I've been able to go back to my kind of writing roots.
When you were in Cary, did you hear about Hillsborough? Is that really what brought you to Hillsborough based upon the writing persona and umbrella that Hillsborough typically has? Is that what brought you from Cary to Hillsborough?
Actually, if I were living in Cary, it's what would have brought me here. That's a good question. Actually, about 40 some years ago, with a couple of friends, built where I am now outside of Hillsborough. So I've been in Hillsborough and kind of the country outside Hillsborough for many, many years. But I did that great commute down I-40 to Cary for a number of years. So, but I have to say, Hillsborough, I've been here. Certainly familiar with the wonderful stores and the downtown and the history, but I never was able to get involved while I was working full time as much as I wanted to. And the Poet Laureate honor and opportunity really enabled me to give back and get to know folks in the town of Hillsborough proper.
That's one thing that I also appreciate, that the title of Poet Laureate not only gives an artist an opportunity to have that title and that prestige, but in regards to the community really welcoming us and putting us under their wing and getting us involved in speeches revolving the mayor, Ms. Jen Weaver, or the mayor before, Mr. Tom Stevens. There's so many different community outreach programs that gives poets voices. So with that being said, do you feel like that title as Poet Laureate gave you an opportunity to share your work more than before?
Very much so. I was able to partner and until, of course, our pandemic situation here. And gosh, 2020, what a year. Completely honor and admire folks who are frontline teachers like yourself, people who've kept things going for folks. But yes, the Poet Laureate opportunity, working with Kafi and other people at the Orange County Public Library, we were able to keep going for a year and a half or so, monthly poetry readings. And through those, I probably met, at least 50 poets, because I would advertise, I would pull people in and talk with folks, and we would always have the ability to share some known poetry, but then we'd have open reading, and the people who read, oh my goodness, so amazing folks in this community, really fine poets, all ages, all ages. We had a 10-year-old young person who absolutely blew us away with an amazing poem.
Oh, yes, I
And
agree. I think every time I've had an opportunity to hear the voices of people in Hillsborough and the surrounding areas, I can't express enough how it really fills me to know that we have such a literary standpoint. I really laugh at the fact that we have a street called Poet Circle,
yeah,
and it really speaks volumes in regards to what we produce out here in Hillsborough. My
yeah,
introduction with poetry and writing came from when I was in high school. My 11th grade English teacher gave me a lot of respect for my writing, and she let me know, like, this is something that you're really good at. With that being said, can you give me some insight on what really kind of sparked that light bulb for you, Ms. Dee Stribling, letting you know, like, wow, this is something that I need to really be pursuing?
I'm can absolutely say that for me, it was exactly the same thing as with you. My English teacher in high school, all four grade, at that point it was 9, 10, 11, 12. Mrs. Stiers, Dean Stiers, was an amazing English teacher. And it's because of her I went back to writing, or thought, well, maybe I can do this. And so teachers mean everything. And without her, I would never have had the confidence to move forward with that.
I love
So
that
same as you.
I love that you remember her name. I hope that like that energy is out into the world and her family is really getting some of that good wave of energy that somebody is speaking
Yeah.
about her, even years beyond. I really hope that they really kind of got that, like, oh man, so I've kind of felt that good energy wave here, because
Yeah.
we really do speak volumes in regards to the teachers that are trying to spark a flame. I have this quote that I say to students all the time, that the reasons why there's math, gym class, English, science, poetry class, your rhythmic class, all of these classes, because we're just trying to figure out which one are you going to like, which one are you going to pay attention to. And I think that the adults, as we are, as writers and as poets, with you having the books behind you, like, it really shows that your lifestyle in regards to you being able to speak to the crowds with such uniqueness and genuineness, and really captivate the crowd with that writing. And I really appreciate that teacher letting you know, like, this is something that you're good at.
The same for you, William. Absolutely. It's a connection that continues. And with you, certainly teaching. One of the other things about being poet laureate that I enjoyed was forming friendships with other poets, yourself for sure, and some other folks, people I never would have known otherwise, and also people in the community. Like you, I had an opportunity to read open at some of the city council meetings, and also some couple of luncheons and such. And I was like, well, I don't know, will they like this, or will it resonate or not? But once you just are yourself and you reach out, people do appreciate poetry. And my goodness, not to segue into Amanda Gorman, but good grief, talk about youth and the brightness of the future for poetry in this country. It's exciting.
Well, yes, with that being said, I want you all that are listening to really just understand that the respect that the town and the community with the Hayti, and there's so many different poetry events going on, that this series right here is presented by the Hillsborough Arts Council.
Mhm.
We're thriving and we're creating programs. And without the help of you all as a community, if you feel compelled, please donate. Call the Hillsborough Arts Council, reach into our website, and let us know. We're looking for sponsors. We're looking for anything that can help us bring more art to you and bring more laureates who are established like Dee and myself, and everybody who's really trying their best to continue to bring art there. You mentioned the 10-year-old writer. One of the mobile community stages that we had, there was a set of twins who were singing to the point where everybody was in awe. Like people walking past were just shook in regards to the voice of these high school seniors. So there's work out here, and the Hillsborough Arts Council, we're really trying our best to give opportunities and platforms for these young artists and these older artists and these younger, older artists and these upcoming artists and all of these artists. With that being said, what advice would you give to an artist, whether a performing artist or a poet, that's just beginning to understand something that they really enjoy? How would you really answer that question?
Yeah, that's a great question. I, like you, probably would just say be yourself, speak your voice. Uh, I believe that we're all creative, and we can be creative, like you were saying a while ago, through math, physics, chemistry, science. We can be creative with our words, with music, but especially with poetry. A young poet, just write. Try not to self-edit. Don't try not to compare yourself to anyone else. So I would say just do it. No one else can walk your unique path. People can follow our footsteps, but and our footprints, but your path is unique. So that's something to celebrate. I would also say read a lot of poetry. And if you're able to, especially once all the pandemic stuff is over, in person attend poetry readings. When I was at UNC, I had the amazing opportunity to hear Maya Angelou twice. And I will never, ever, ever not just forget her words, but I will never forget how it felt. Nikki Finney's another one I've heard. Never will forget how that felt. So being that energy, I would advise a young poet, get yourself out there, do readings, go for it. Find a mentor like you, or people whose poetry resonates with you. But everybody has a unique voice. Just go for it.
Well, that's so funny. I love that you said that. I created a project, an assignment, where I have young writers, students, research poets. And of course, with respect to Black History Month, of course, since I did the project this month, I had them look up Black poets in respect to why not learn of someone you haven't known before. And it was really cool to hear what you said, like find an artist that you resonate. And I had a couple students who would pick a poet, and then they change the poet, and then they change the poet again. And it's like, no, I really like this poem. Like this poem, I thought I liked this poem, but I really like this poem. So this is the poet. And I'm sitting in my class just enjoying that, just enjoying the process of like seeing the motors turns, and getting them to understand that there are so many different voices out here. With that being said, I know this is off script, but do you have a particular poet that really spoke to you in the beginning stages of your life in regards to, oh, wow, this is something that I want to try to do? Not necessarily saying a poet that spoke to you to enjoy their work, but like, oh, maybe influenced by their work in regards to try to kind of persuade your pen that way.
I really, I'm going to go one really opposite, different kinds of poetry here, but I have to go back to Maya Angelou, because I for one thing, I will never get Phenomenal Woman out of my mind and just her reading at the inauguration, presidential inauguration. I also had the incredible good luck to accidentally be in the same sort of restaurant area as she was in Taos, New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And she knew that I knew who she was. And I was petrified. I would never have approached her in a million years. But as I was getting up to leave, she motioned me to come over, and I will never, ever forget the look that she gave me. And we talked and spoke just briefly, and then I thanked her and left. But again, that's so for a poet in person, she had tremendous influence over me. Now, other poets, I have to say, I like Shelley, I like Lord Byron, I like classic poets as well. But I also grew up, it was in high school in the 60s. And so that era of civil rights, the Vietnam War, poetry by folks like Dudley Randall. I mean, all the people who spoke in that for our generation, who were so out there, Robert Bly. Yeah, it's a real mix of people. And then you have poetry as song as well. You have all those folks like, Bob Dylan, Buffy St. Marie, all the whole raft of
Oh,
60s
yes.
people.
I love what you're saying in regards to the poetry that speaks to the generation.
Yep.
Poetry that speaks to a particular poet. You're really dropping some wise words here in regards to someone feeling like poetry doesn't resonate to them, but it's in regards to finding what poetry speaks to you, what poetry is speaking to the people that you're about, that's speaking to your culture. And that's one thing that I enjoy doing. I'm a teacher, I'm a father, and I have so many poems about my father, about me being a father, about my mother, about my kid's mother, because that's the relationship that I have, and that's kind of where my thought process is. So on that note, is there a particular subject that you enjoy writing about, or that you feel like really you are inspired by?
I would have to say, I'm probably a bit more of a loner. I would have to say landscape. For me, there's, even as a little kid, I was an only child, I grew up in the country. There's just an innate feeling and joy and celebration around the natural world, for example. And the natural world could be a tree growing in the middle of Manhattan. I mean, it doesn't have to be a forest or whatever, but I have to say landscape, which is where geography comes in again. Landscapes like there are in, for example, New Mexico, some of the arid, high altitude desert regions, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, just the drama, the power, and to realize the connectedness, how connected we are with that, with the way spirit shows through landscape. Spirit shows through people, of course, and our four-legged family as well. But I'd have to say a lot of indigenous beliefs resonate with me. And I've just always been like that. So that's my kind of go-to thing.
That sounds good. On that note of what inspires you to write, do you mind sharing a poem?
I'll be glad to, William. Let's see. In the spirit of what I was just talking about here. This poem is entitled Roads, R-O-A-D-S. So, ask of my dream, and I'll tell you a lie until I go there and meet the people and watch their horizon appear over farms, rivers, mountains, snow, until I hear the wind screaming through Ida Mae's holler and howling across Short's field as it picks up packs of sounds from coyotes, bobcats, and owls, until the yellow sun blazes into cinders of night and white moonlit clouds show the way across fields full of pricked ears, waiting for the tiniest rustle of grasses. Yes, ask me of my dream until I can tell you with all my being that my heart found temporary lodging there, and spirit, earth, and sky were comfortable and welcoming.
I love that so much. I love that so much, Oscar. I appreciate that poem. I
Yeah.
appreciate that poem. At that last event that we were at across the street from Witt's and Hillsborough Barbecue,
Right.
I really enjoyed your work. I really enjoyed the transition from myself and DS Will, and
It was great.
and just really love how we can come together and really share our work to the masses, and just the looks on folks' faces. You mentioned earlier that it's the poetry that speaks to the generation, and I've said 7 years ago, and I'm going to say 14 years from now and 21 years from then, that we as poets are the speakers around the campfire years before the tablets and the pen and paper. When somebody was having a hard time, they told us their story, and we were able to reflect that story in a positive manner. When somebody was having a hard time, they came for us for those wise words based upon that something that we heard a year before. We remember different and we hear different. We're able to reflect on what we hear and what we sound, and the sounds of everything around us. And that poem right there really spoke volumes to that. What has been one of the best things said about your poetry? Is that something that you can reflect on?
You kind of cut out just a little bit in the beginning of that.
I was saying, what was one of the best things that has been said about your poetry?
One of the things that people have shared, first of all, if anyone hears a poem that any of us have done and says thank you, or it resonated with them, then that's a gift. That's great. And before I answer the question, I have to go back and segue again to when we were reading together, the three of us as poets. I loved the juxtaposition of different styles, but we were all sort of channeling the same kind of spirit.
Mm-hmm. The appreciation for being there, the appreciation
Yes.
for being there in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the masks,
Yeah.
in the midst of
Yeah.
the separation and the social distancing, and we were all on the same accord. I totally agree.
Yeah, it was just a great experience. But sometimes the folks who have listened to poetry that I have done, there was one person who wrote a little blurb that I liked a lot. It said, "There's a sense of gathering of the ancients," and what they were talking about were ancestors. And I think honoring and remembering our ancestors is critical to understanding our place in the world now. And we all have different, in many ways, different ancestors. And that can be literal, it can also be spiritual. But in the end, we're all the same. And we all have this incredible history and richness of people who've come before us, who've laid the groundwork for who we are now. And that goes back to your point of, in a way, of poets being storytellers. We are the ones who sat around the campfire to speak.
That sounds awesome. Do you mind speaking to us again? How about that? That was a great segue.
I'll do that. That was a good segue.
That was good. Do you mind speaking to us again?
So this one's not quite as gentle as that first one, but one of the things I've found in terms of your students who probably will have fun with these at some point in their life, this is not a rant poem, but I was around a good friend of mine the other day, theater friend, who suddenly started really just, I'm not just ranting about COVID and the anger and the just really pulled it together nicely. This isn't that, but again, I think as poets, we have to speak to the truth, what's happening now, what's around us, and channel that. But back to the ancestors. This poem is about ancestors. It's called First Bones. We have to search for the bones. They will not be bleaching peacefully in the sun. Clear away cropped stubble, smooth the ground, kneel and dig, crust old dirt under new fingernails, scrape away layer after layer, bury your hands deep into this field and feel their bones are within our grasp. Dig furiously, dig until you lose sight of yourself. Dig until you cannot see who you are, but only who they are to you. Do not stop until you found the first bone and then the next and the next. They are all connected. Spirit wrapped in a quilt of memory, tangible wholeness waiting. There are no fallow fields, not in this land. There is still life here. Buried bones make it so. Search and feel to remember how to speak with them. Greet their bones and then listen, for they will respond in searing sun, winter wind, bird song, and night owls. Their wisdom is ours to remember, to honor, and to love.
Great job, Dee. Great job. I want to remind you all that this series is brought to you all by the Hillsborough Art Council. This is our writers series where we're interviewing writers from all across Hillsborough for them to give us information in regards to their process, a little bit about themselves. So when you see them around the town, you're a little bit more familiar in regards to the artist that's performing for you all on last Friday events at council meetings. Just in regards to the library, maybe just reading a book. So just remember that, again, this is brought to you by the Hillsborough Arts Council. And my last question for you all before we end this, it's always a fun question. In regards to who you are now, Dee Stribling, Hillsborough's poet laureate, phenomenal person, nice smile, always there, got the rosy cheeks when you're trying to hold the smile in. I noticed, I see it. I'm gonna call you out. That wasn't even on the script. I'm gonna call you out. I noticed that a while ago. Try to hold it in. Yep, that's there. My question for you, how do you think that that teacher who gave you insight of how awesome you were, how do you think that she would see you now?
Oh, wow. I hope that she would, okay, let me start that over. I think that she would see me as one of her students who actually listened to her and respected and internalized and took in, even though I didn't really believe it at the time, took in her words. I listened. There are people in your life, like teachers, who really you listen to because they see you. She saw me. And it was priceless. So I hope she would, that be proud of me. That's not the right word. I hope she would smile. That's what
great.
I hope.
That was really, really good. She actually saw you. I appreciate you so much, Dee. I appreciate the Hillsborough Arts Council for asking me to interview you. And I look forward to the work that you and I are going to continue to do with the Youth Poet Laureate. Hillsborough, get ready because you're going to hear some phenomenal art from some young people. And you're going to continue to hear that because Dee and I have really put the rubber to the road to make sure that that program is going to stick here in Hillsborough. And it's going to be long running, just as this Poet Laureate ship that her and I have had the honor to hold. If you guys are looking for Dee, please look her up, Dee Stribling. Do you have anything else that you would like to say to the listeners before we close out?
I would just like to underscore everything you said. We are so lucky, William, to have you in this community. And I feel so excited to partner with you in both these Poet Laureate programs. And really, it's once we can all get out again, there's so much we can do, so much art we can share. Thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you, and I want to turn the tables one of these days. And,
I look forward.
More about you.
I really look forward to it. I really look forward to it. Thank you for your time, Dee. Thank you so much. I'm happy that we have a mutual friend that I met on a whim, and I look forward to continuing to just to go together. I look forward to go to that, to do that. Thank you so much.